Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larson. On this episode, I'm excited to have Mark Rampolla. We're going to talk about the beverage business. We're going to talk about the investment fund business. We're going to talk about a lot of fun things. Mark, thanks for doing this.
Jess, great to be here.
So can you give us the quick overview from Fortune 50 company, building, selling, the investment fund business, buying back again, building again, the excitement of being a finance entrepreneur?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, look, I'll take it back just real quickly on my background. So, I started not off the beaten path, off the dirt path as a Peace Corps volunteer in Central America. So I was doing microfinance and some sustainability programs. Then I had a corporate career for about 7 years and wound up running a number of businesses, mainly in the packaging business in Latin America for a global Fortune 50 company, International Paper. And loved that, and I learned a lot, had a lot of fun, and had the opportunity, I think, to grow. I was on a track to kind of become somewhere in the C-suite someday, but I think I realized that wasn't my path. I looked at my boss's job, my boss's boss's job, and I just didn't love them. That company was headquartered in Memphis, Tennessee, which we loved living in for a few years. I didn't want to live there forever. And so I realized, God, I got to do something else. And so I kind of fell into entrepreneurship through that, sort of in some ways, some fear, some desire to have the sort of freedom that I thought I could have. And so I started this coconut water company, Zico. And so, quit my job, moved to New York, and had these big dreams, and the reality bites hard sometimes. So, for 5 years, it was brutal. The business was growing, but we weren't making any money. I remember the first year, my income was cut to 1/3, not by 1/3, but to 1/3 of it was previously. And moving to New York, our expenses had tripled, right? So that math was not working well, but we muddled through, my young family and I, and then eventually moved to California to scale Zico on the West Coast, and sold the brand of Coca-Cola. So I sort of achieved the entrepreneurial dream, sold the company, had some money in the bank, and took off some time, and became an active angel investor until I realized I really loved investing. And so I wound up starting, figuring out how to formalize that, and so started an investment firm. Originally we were called Power Plant, now we're called Ground Force Capital. We have about $500 million under management. And look, it's a learning curve. You and I talked about this, running money and learning how to invest money is a very different skill than entrepreneurship. But what I love is I get to do a little bit of both, where I love the finance side. I love thinking through these big opportunities, but I love working with the entrepreneurs and diving into the weeds. Every once in a while, I get pretty deep, including an opportunity came up where we saw an opportunity to buy back Zico from Coca-Cola through my firm. And we did so. They weren't really doing the best that we thought it could be done with it. We saw a $1 billion plus opportunity. They were, so they saw a couple $100 million opportunity. So we bought it. So I now have a team in place. I'm not running the company, but I play an active role as chairman of the board. So I get to dabble, right? I spend about a third of my time working with prospective entrepreneurs, a third working with existing companies, and a third working on sort of the fund and team and strategy for our firm.
That's so exciting. So let's just talk about some of these investments. How about one of my favorites, Liquid Death? Where were they at? How did you meet Mike? What happened there?
Yeah. So look, we pride ourselves on staying in touch with what's happening. So it's pretty rare that something pops up and gets some traction that we're not aware of from the data we track, from the people we know, from being out in the market. So we saw Liquid Death immediately, and it was teeny. They had just launched, and so through some friends of friends, I met Mike, and liked him immediately. He's an extraordinary guy, very unique thinker, and so we liked it right away. And one of the things that really excited us is, we look at a lot of beverage or food brands, let's say, that have success in maybe a Whole Foods. But then the question is, can they really scale in the mainstream? Or we see them in pure mainstream, and we wonder, okay, what maybe they're in, Walmart or 7-Eleven, but, maybe it's one region or one certain place, or low sales numbers. Rarely do we see a brand so early on work in both. Their data very early on, within months of launching, was Whole Foods was selling at record numbers, and so was 7-Eleven. Yeah, and that's extraordinarily rare. And we track, the energy drink category, the alcohol category, the water category. And so we felt like he was on to something really unique. Interestingly, we tried to invest and lead his Series A round, and we lost. And he was very clear. He wanted to work with us. And, I'll own, we gave him what we thought was a very, very healthy valuation. Family office came in and gave him a better one. And we just weren't willing to match it, given the discipline we have as a firm. But we stayed close, and we wound up coming in materially into one of the next round. But by this time, it was even more clear that this thing was a winner, so we could justify that. He had sort of grown into the valuation he wanted. So I love working with Mike. He's an extraordinary entrepreneur, and he's building something really special.
Yeah. So his former boss at the agency, Humanaut, David Littlejohn, was on my show, I don't know, 6 years ago or something.
Whoa, wow.
And told us about him. He's like, my employee quit. We had all these clients who just didn't have the guts to do the big crazy things. So he just quit and started his own, and it's going great. And we watch it. And, I'm a snowboarder, from the 80s and 90s. And so that all the like heavy metal stuff, I thought was absolutely hilarious right off the bat. And
right. Look, that's the key insight, is actually humor, right? It's not so much, Mike's tatted up. Yeah, he's into, heavy metal music. I think his big insight was people sort of assume that audience, drinks and only wants to drink and doesn't drink water, only Red Bull or Monster, right? But what he's really done is built that brand around humor, around parody. And he's got a Saturday Night Live level writing staff for his marketing team now, but he's also one of these rare entrepreneurs that also can execute. Fortunately, he's built a great team around him. We helped in that process, but yeah, he's pretty extraordinary.
What do you think their valuation has grown to from when you bought into now?
Oh, I mean, look, it's I'd have to think about the math exactly, but it's probably the top line valuation has 10x at least.
Yeah.
Now, there's dilution and rounds and follow on, as
sure.
That doesn't always equate to anything, but it's definitely been a big winner. Now, I think I've seen this movie enough times to know, even with a great, brand, even with great execution, even with great growth, there's still a lot to do to build an enduring business, a business that's built to last. And then there's even a bigger jump to monetize, right? And so there's still a lot of hurdles to get through. And, running a cool, hip, $5, $10, $20 million business is very different than running a $200 million business that has distributors and retailers and expectations and teams and investors, So, but I think Mike's got what it takes to. I honestly think he's gonna run this thing for forever.
That's so fun. Well, can you talk about some of the more notable investments, both on the plant side and the beverage side as well?
Yeah. One that comes to mind that's in some ways, might be the antithesis of a brand, but has a lot of commonalities, is an infant formula brand called Bobby. And what's interesting there is the founder was an Laura Modi was an ex Airbnb executive, world-class professional. And when she started having kids, she realized that, she was working, she wanted to breastfeed. It turns out 97% of women want to breastfeed their babies. 7% actually do it the whole time, right? Because of work, because of challenges, because of physical limitations, whatever it is. And the reality is that there's this general movement for health and wellness, and with good reason. But you look at baby formula, it's corn syrup, it's artificial ingredients, it's crap. And so she said, wait a second, why am I going to feed my baby something I would never eat in these most important years of their life? And so, she set out to figure out an alternative. At the time, all you could do is import product from Europe because it's a totally regulated market and it's illegal to do so. She and thousands of other moms were importing product from Europe that was cleaner than what they could get in the US. So she said, look, this is garbage. I'm going to start something. So she started this business. And one of the other things she realized was there was a lot of stigma against formula, right? There was this probably necessary and healthy debate over the last 50 years. Hey, let's help moms understand it's actually really important to breastfeed, right? If you can do that, it's good for your baby. But that swung so far that many women feel guilty about this. I remember my wife did as well. Like, there's this guilt and pressure, like, oh my God, you have to breastfeed your baby. So Laura sort of concluded, this is garbage, right? Like, I want to support women. I went through this. I know how hard it is. I want them to have a clean, alternative, and I want them to feel supported in this choice they're making, whatever choice they want to make. And so, so she launched this brand. But man, this category is challenging because you've got big players, Abbott Labs, these massive Bayer, these massive, pharmaceutical companies own this industry, right? They control it. They've got 60% market share. Nobody's launched a new brand in decades. And she figured out how. And so she launched the brand. She worked with some co-manufacturers. And then we made a major investment. We led a $75 million round so they could acquire a competitor and have a facility. And so this thing now is a rocket ship. But if any woman that is going through this period, I'd say it's probably about an 80% chance they know of this brand.
How do you spell it?
Bobbie, Bobbie, B-O-B-B-I, Bobbie Infant Formula.
I've actually gone and toured one of those labs, the Abbott ones out in the Midwest. I was on part of a continuous improvement organization, and they were applying to win a prize, and got to see the insides, and it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, look, understandably, there's a reason to be concerned or protected. What are we feeding our kids? But in some ways, we went to such an extreme. We'll feed them, corn syrup, but perfectly processed, right, and perfectly, managed in a way. So, look, that company is interesting. It's about the same size as Liquid Death, growing about as quickly, and but in very similar fanatical consumer base. Really strong brand, right? Like, not everybody knows, Liquid Death, but people know Liquid Death, know it and love it. Same with Bobbie. I'll give you another example of one that, you may not know. There's this one is plant-based. It's a meal delivery company called Thistle, and started by some brilliant founders that were, struggling, both working professionals, struggling to have, good, eat healthy, finding there's a lot of processed foods or they're eating out all the time. So they developed a meal delivery business that is really clean. It is, I think it's still all plant-based today, or at least plant-forward in a way. Yeah, they're not totally dogmatic about it, but you get basically super fresh meals delivered to your home 2 or 3 times a week. And this thing, that whole category's been interesting. It's had its ups and downs. Factor went public at a crazy valuation. That's come back down to earth. But meanwhile, they just step by step have built a really great business, West Coast, East Coast, and they're now 100 million plus, profitable, and still growing really nicely.
Okay, since I've got you, I want to corner you for some free advice, because related to a couple of things that you brought up. And obviously you guys have had other, have amazing other folks in portfolios and previous portfolios, Thrive and Beyond Meat and other, folks have done well. So I want to talk about with Bobbie, like going up against big incumbents, but also having a negative stigma when you go out there, where you really have to, like, something you got to overcome. And then when you were talking about Thistle here, this idea of like a fractured market. I mean, Blue Apron, HelloFresh. I mean, all these folks, and from the outside, they don't necessarily like until somebody actually looks at them. A lot of times the differentiation isn't as obvious to the consumer as it is to the founder, right?
Right.
Like,
right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
sure.
if somebody were to say, Blue Apron, HelloFresh, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Each of those founders would be like, not at all. We do.
Right.
We are so differentiated, right?
Yeah.
And yet they eat away at it, and they can make a big business. Everybody says, you need to be the first one in a marketplace, first mover advantage, all these things. And then Ali Thomasep has that amazing book about how many billion-dollar companies show up in a crowded market and they figure out how to do different and better. I mean, Liquid Death, the guy's selling water.
Yeah.
Right? But he figured out how to do different and better in, it's like, all those books, Differentiate or Die, Different by Young Mi Moon, Blue Ocean Strategy, right? And what I think what people sometimes lose, Play Bigger, Christopher Lochhead, is so often they feel like you have to go do something that no one else is doing at all. Instead of realizing how many people have been successful going into a quote unquote crowded market and pulling off different within a crowded market in a way that, I mean, how many water companies have been started before Liquid Death? I mean, it's countless, right?
Yeah, countless.
So we were talking before about what we're doing at Greystoke Investments with our JV company with very successful unicorn founders on this idea of go buy a really incredible second home, Aspen or Park City or Newport Beach, Redondo Beach, where you got a place, Hawaii, Miami Beach, one of these like stunning places that people want to home, and going like, hey, listen, you're not getting anything beachfront in Hawaii for $2 million. You're excited, you've made the money, you're in the place where you can buy like a great second home somewhere, and then you start shopping, you're like, wow, 2.1 million gets me a condo. There's no beachfront for 2.3 million somewhere, right? And it's like, well, what if you have a few kids? And that 2-bedroom condo in Aspen, do you know what I mean? Like, this is not those like the place where your in-laws are like, holy cow, you've really made it, Mike.
Right.
Mark. So this idea, okay, buy a $10 million second home. And then split it up into 6 parts so that, basically I'm making a, 12-15% uptick by buying wholesale the whole house and reselling at retail. And people are happy to pay a little bit of a bump to not have to buy the other 80% of the home they weren't going to buy. The ones who get it. But here's the problem. As soon as you tell somebody about this, they're like, oh, timeshares. And so to Bobby and Formula, she's got this huge, like, yes, but no. Like, technically, this has a whole bunch of similarities to baby formula. Except it doesn't have corn syrup. Except it doesn't have, all the reasons you dislike formula? We don't have that stuff. So I guess we're kind of like formula. If there's a whole different like name for formula that doesn't have crap in it that you wouldn't want to feed your baby, right? And so for us, we're like, yes, it does. Like, you're right. Like, you are just buying, 2 weeks, 4 different times a year. You're 8 weeks. Couple, 2 peak seasons, 2 shoulder seasons. And, if you get Christmas this year, you probably aren't getting Christmas next year. It's going to rotate, right? But this concept of like, those things go down in value. And this goes up in value because you actually own the property. You're not just renting time in somebody else's hotel.
Right.
It's like similar, but kind of completely different. And yet on the surface, it's the automatic reaction. Oh, so like timeshare. It's like, any advice for getting away from the negative stigma, just like Bobby's gotten away from the corn syrup?
So look, this is one of my favorite things to do, right? Of course, you're getting what you're paying for here, which is, nothing. So take it for what it's worth. But I love brainstorming these sort of things. So I have some thoughts for sure. But I will caveat this by saying that if there's one thing that I've learned, it's very rare to have an insight, an idea, and in a message and it sticks forever and you're done, right? Mike got that with Liquid Death. Laura maybe got that with Bobby. I'd have to think back on the early stages. But even Mike with Liquid Death, if I look back on their earliest deck till now, right? Think about their messaging. It's shifted a lot. It's shifted. I have to think how and where, and going after kids versus adults, right? So one thing I've learned is I try to always remember separating process versus content, right? The content is, this is the message. The process is how to get to the message. How often do you look at the message? How often do you think about the positioning, right? How do you test and learn? And that power of test and learn, right? So what occurs to me is, and I'll give you some real-time examples of this, I'll tell you where I learned this first on was at Zico, right? When we were launching Zico, people either knew coconut water or they didn't. If they knew it, they thought it came in a can and had a ton of sugar, or you only get it on the beach. So we spent a ton of time, what do we say? How do we position? And people that didn't know about it didn't have a clue what it was. Is it coconut water? Is it Zico? What is coconut water? So literally in the first couple months, I spent, and I had a team spend, every day out on the street, getting in the stores, sampling people, but gathering data. Now, we weren't doing that, back in 2004, as sophisticated as you could do it today, A/B testing and whatever, right? What resonates? What works? What doesn't work? With whom? When? Where? How? Right? So in your situation, what occurs to me, first of all, is this all gets solved with execution, right? And so what occurs to me is, look, are you planning the bigger vision? For example, as a potential customer for something like this, what goes through my mind is, okay, am I getting part of this just one house, or am I potentially part of the whole thing, right? And am I potentially part of this as a customer, or am I potentially part of it as an investor, right? So is there a way to think about this and then is there, and I would be mapping out all the different ways people may respond that you've picked up. Okay, timeshare. How do you respond to that question? So literally I had written out for Zico early on I forget what the term for it is. It's basically a flow chart that says it's an if then flow chart, right? So if somebody says timeshare, here are the responses. And it's not just about responding, it's about learning what resonates with people or not. So it might be, oh, well, what do you know about timeshares? What do you think about timeshares, right? Because you are now making an assumption about somebody's got this negative connotation. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe it's negative for different reasons. Maybe, right? So what do you understand about timeshares? Well, let me explain to you what happened in that industry, what worked in that industry, why that didn't. And let me tell you how we're thinking about this, right? There's also examples. I don't know, what's this? I see ads for this Vacanza or something.
Yeah, right? There's some other folks out there. And this was kind of my point about Thistle, right? There's Amber, there's Picasso. I mean, the idea of like friends getting together by houses, people have been doing that for decades or longer. It's not a new concept, but
exactly,
people are doing it differently.
And so what I think, what I see is, I wish I had a silver bullet for you on how to solve it, but I can't emphasize enough the great companies I see test and learn, test and learn, test and learn. And even with us, when we're thinking about how do we position Ground Force, how do we talk about it? My partner and I come out of a meeting with an investor. We're probably raising our next fund in a year. We had a meeting. We've had meetings for the last couple of months. We're always meeting with potential investors. What worked? What didn't work? What sounded? How did that sound? Right? And that's real-time market feedback to learn. All that being said, execution solves everything, right? And execution is learning. And one of the things I encourage entrepreneurs is, spend time on really two things. Think about almost as much as what you don't do as what you do, and then go to what's working, right? I think there's a tendency of entrepreneurs to like solve problems. That's true. That there's an aspect of our job that's always that, but it's also what's working. So when you see somebody's face resonating with, oh, I said this, not that. I could see, maybe they haven't signed up yet, but I see that more of that and less of something else, right? But at the end of the day, I really believe that execution tells you everything, right? And so with a brand like Thistle, with a situation like yours, what I'd say is one house, you may have to talk to 500 people to get them in. But when they're in, make sure the execution is so in the learning before the other house. What works? What do you like? What do you not like? Get together. What would you like to see? What and make it an experience that's so beyond an Airbnb or a timeshare or anything. And they're tracking the market, right? Oh, here's what's happening in Hawaii. So they're now thinking about not just staying, but making money. Here's what's happening in real estate. Here's another comp, right? So it's sort of this 360 approach of getting in people's, DNA to think about your value proposition, your business.
Okay, this is so confirming. So they finished the first one all the way start to finish, and we are now about to head to Hawaii next week, actually, to look for the second one. And so I've actually got the meeting you're talking about happens tomorrow at 1 p.m.
Okay.
with our partners who've already been through it start to finish. And
right.
But that's so confirming to have you say that. And
let me offer you one thought in that meeting, please. If you're open to it, is I don't know you well enough to say your predisposition, but most people I know have a predisposition to reach conclusions pretty damn fast, biased to either recency or all these different biases, and also to we tend to assume we're right about things. Go in assuming you know nothing. Go and ask questions. Don't have a single statement. Only questions. And avoid the tendency to reach a conclusion, right? Are we sure? What about this? What the hell? Let's and set that out from the beginning, right? This is we're not going to reach any conclusions. Hey, again, it's your meeting. You decide how to run it. But I find that there's this power in setting a framework, a container that allows learning, questioning, criticism. We'll reach conclusions later, right? Let's not assume we're right. And then doing that on a constant basis, But I think it's an interesting idea. I do. But I always also say, ideas are a dime a dozen. It's all about execution, right? But you executed the first one, then it's on to the second.
Yeah. Just quickly, because I want to talk more about Zico, and I know you guys are raising right now. By the way, how much are you guys raising right now?
We're raising about 10 to 15. We probably have, the company is, but I'm playing an active role, obviously. I think they probably got about 5 million open. So we've got a good group of investors coming in, but it's fascinating for me is, I wish we didn't have to raise it all. This is a fund 2 position for us. If we had the capital available, we wouldn't be raising from anyone. I want to own 100% of this. But this is one of our smaller funds. We've got to diversify, so we've got to go outside. So we just started going outside. So it's mainly going to be family offices and individuals. It's not a big enough check to attract the big firms. But we've got a good group coming in. But we still need probably about 5 million.
Cool. Okay, just before we move on here, you said that you just said, as a potential consumer of your thing, Jess, right? I'd be interested to know, what is it, different parts of the model appeal to different people? What potentially appeals to you?
Yeah, look, I can tell you very specifically. I've had this thought I've been thinking about this for, 25 years, I lived in Latin America. I thought about buying some real estate. I was living in Costa Rica. I didn't have any money back then, but places that are worth millions, tens of millions right now, I could have bought cheap back then. I had some friends that did that. So, right now, my real debate is I know what a pain in the ass second homes are. And so I have pretty much concluded. I mentioned to you, I bought this property in Utah, had a house designed, and I don't think I'm going to go through with it because I concluded that it's a lot of work and it's a lot of maintenance. And I also am aware of my tendency, if I have a place, I have to go to it, right? And I love the freedom right now of deciding I go to different places. So I love Utah. That's probably my default ski place. But you know what? I like to go to British Columbia. I like to go to Colorado. I like to go to Wyoming. So it's nice to be able to mix that up. So I've pretty much, and I was in Italy last year, really thinking I'm going to find a place that's going to be my sort of long-term second home. Reached the same conclusion. Like, I love Italy. I go to Italy all the time. This next summer, I'm going to France, And so I like flexibility. At the same time, I do like putting down some roots. And so I like the idea of some consistency of a place. And so, do I want to buy? I've looked over the years. Hawaii's not really my ideal place for a variety of reasons. I like Latin America, but I love Hawaii. It's pretty amazing. Would I buy a place there? Would I buy a place in Utah? But probably not right now. But if I could but at the same time, I like hotels for short trips. I love renting out beautiful Airbnb. But the reality is those get pretty damn expensive. I'll make money on them for sure. And, I'm paying top dollar for a week or two in these places. And I can't help thinking, God, if I'm going to places consistently enough, and there's always the uncertainty too. New place, do I know it? Do I got to figure it out? So look, I've thought about this. Whatever that one Vacanza is or something. I actually talked to them, looked at that a little bit. For me, I've looked at some of these other models. I've looked at some of the house swapping models. You know what I mean? So it's interesting to me. It's not like it would be really dependent on the location, the house. Does it fit with what I want? But I think conceptually, the idea that I got a place, I can book out a couple weeks a year. Yeah, I can go. I can send some friends there. I think you can build some routine with family there. I love that, and particularly if it's a couple different places, right? If it's okay, there's a place in Miami, there's a place in Hawaii, there's a place in London or Southern Europe or something like that. So conceptually, I get it. And it's something I've thought a lot about and would be interested in, but it all depends on, kind of what I really want at that, and for that part of my life.
Yeah. That is so helpful. Thank you so much. I want to talk about, Zico though. It's interesting after, 1,000 episodes, there's some commonalities you start to hear in different folks, right? And you're not the first one who I've had on who built a great company, sold it to corporate America, made this big return, and as the bean counters took over, they just didn't execute on the vision. They're kind of like it's kind of like the business lost an entrepreneur. And then stuff happens, and they start neglecting it, and all of a sudden, the owner can buy it back for a song, and they just do it over again. And it's funny how often, it's not all the time, but it is surprising. It's not just a once in a life. No, it's not just once in a while. There's a decent number of folks that are that have done that. Sell it for so much, buy it back at a fraction, and build it back bigger than they sold it the first time. When you think about that here, why are you so excited again? It's the same brand. Why are you so excited the second time?
Look, I'd say there's three aspects of that. There's a personal one, there's a financial one, and then there's a sort of a game one, right? And so, the personal one is I was done with Zico. It took a lot out of me, and I felt like I got two beautiful daughters, and I had this one rambunctious son named Zico, and I got him off to the Harvard of the beverage world, with Coca-Cola. I was done. Out of the house, done. Moved on to other things. And I did a lot of work. We talked about, sort of coaching and other things. I actually did a lot of therapy on disassociating my identity is no longer Zico, right? And that was healthy, right? To say, that's Zico, this is me. I can take on that role if they're distinct. And so I moved on. But I also understood there was a lot from that experience that I had avoided, denied, not gotten everything I could have out of that experience because I'm, younger, a lot of fear, a lot of, different reasons that I don't think I was at my absolute best. And sometimes life gives you another shot. And so I saw this as a shot to, in some ways, work out some of the personal things I needed to work out, right? I'll give you one specific example, and this ties into the business too. Coca-Cola had made an investment in a minority investor about halfway through our journey. From that point forward, the game became build the sell friend, build the work in their system. And so when I look back, in many ways, I wasn't building the company to last. I wasn't building the team and organization to go the furthest, achieve their full potential, and me to achieve my full potential. It became get to the finish line, right? And that worked. No shame, no blame. That happened. This time around, it's a very different scenario. So we looked at it with brutally critical eyes as an investment firm. I recused myself from the investment committee process to make sure I wasn't bringing in my emotional bias. But the data was clear. You got a $1 billion category, coconut water, growing by 20% per year, fastest growing beverage category out there today. One major competitor, Vita Coco, with 50% market share, $500 million in revenue, gone public. There's no number two. There's no number two. Every category needs a number two. Zico is a known brand. Coke spent $40 million on marketing. It's got a premium positioning. It's got a great taste profile. Like the business opportunity is huge. Not to mention that coconut water is, alone, we believe has the potential to be the size of orange juice, multi-billion-dollar market. There's no question on this growth rate, the way it's going, it's going to happen. But also, it is being used predominantly as a sports drink, predominantly for hydration. That market is 40 times bigger. So we start to play into and grab some share from sports drinks and energy drinks. Prime struggling, these other artificial ones are coming down. Consumers are looking for hydration, electrolytes, but natural and healthy. We got a big opportunity, right? So we looked at that with very clear, rational, private equity, growth capital eyes and said, there's an economic opportunity here. And then I love a business challenge, So the idea of looking, being able to look rationally at, Coca-Cola or, the people in there and say, oh yeah, we see an opportunity way bigger than you do, way bigger, and we know how to build it, right? It's fun. I love that, And so I love the story that says, hey, we're going to go do something even Coca-Cola, the most successful beverage company in the world, couldn't do. We're going to build this thing bigger than ever. And the thing that's fun for me too is we've built an extraordinary team. I had a really good team around Zico the first time around. This time it's even better. Just everything I've learned, the network we have. And so I get to be my best too, where I was a good CEO, very good, probably top, 1%, 2%. I wasn't in the 0.1%. I wasn't. I'm a visionary. I have certain skill sets. I have my own zone of genius. The team that's running this is better than me. They just are. And so my expertise as board member, as visionary, get in the weeds when I need to, but let them execute. They're better than me at that. So that combination is amazing. It fuels me. It's an energy up for me. I get to, have calls like this. I get to have the meetings I want to have, but somebody is sweating the details, 24/7 for the next number of years.
That's awesome. Well, listen, this has been so fun. If people want to follow you online or connect, where are the best places?
Best is LinkedIn. Just Mark Rampolla on LinkedIn. I'm not great on other social media platforms yet, but they can track me there.
That's so fun. Well, thanks again for making time for this.
Thanks, Jess. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, bye everyone.